Stop mourning the person you used to be at 25. That person didn't have a mortgage, they didn't have a career, and they didn't have your responsibilities. They just had more time. And if you're waiting for that person to show up and do the work, you've already lost. It's now time to build the kind of life that you need for someone who's over 40. That 20-something version of you lived in a totally different ecosystem than you currently live in. And what that means is that you're comparing yourself to a completely different paradigm, something that no longer is relevant to where you're at. It's a common thing that I hear all the time as a personal trainer. I used to be fit. I used to run Ironmans. I used to have a sub 20-minute 5K. I used to do this. I used to do that. I used to lift heavy. I used to play sport. And that's great. That's part of your past. It's part of the chapters of your life that built the person you are, but they're perhaps not relevant to where you are now. And as a trainer, I'm seeing people walk through the door who are typically not 25. The people who come to me, they've got careers, they've got kids, they've got families, they've got travel, they've got a ton of responsibilities on their shoulder, and it's causing them to be a little bit lost. And the system that they've been using for the last 10, 15 years is no longer relevant. I'll start that again. Many people are stuck in a kind of loop where they're comparing their current version of themselves, that person with a kid, with a career that's demanding, with a mortgage, with international travel, or with parents who are ill. They're comparing that version of themselves to the younger version. Because that younger version had certain attributes that they now miss. You know, they were maybe slim, had abs, were athletic, probably didn't have as many cares, didn't have as many worries. They probably felt really happy. They probably felt free. Comparing yourself to the past is not helpful. I mean, you probably heard the phrase, comparison is the thief of joy. And it's something that can weigh you down and hold you back. In fact, we often see the past and what we achieved in the past, particularly when it comes to our weight, our athletic achievements from the past, as something that was a positive, but actually long-term it's becoming a negative. It's holding you back. It's making you think, well, if I can't do it like I used to do it, perhaps I shouldn't do it. And then we get stuck in this loop, this narrative in which the life we live now, the person we are now, can never live to that heights that we had as a young man or a young woman. And why even bother? And I see it in both sexes. It's not something that's unique to men. And look, I do hear men more often say that, than women, I used to be really good at sport, because, guys identify themselves based on their kind of vigor and their athletic ability and their strength. And a lot of people do lose it. You spend 20, 25, 30 years at a desk. You go from being that athletic teen who was playing football, rugby, cricket, tennis, I mean, look, my kids, they're doing all kinds of sports all the time. They think about it all the time. And you can't imagine a world in which you're sat at a desk from like 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. You barely move, you're just from meeting to meeting to meeting. And then all of a sudden you wake up and you've atrophied, you've changed. And so I do see that more from men. From women, there's typically a weight that they've had in their head, or some dress size, or a shape that they've had. And that's when they felt happiest. I mean, we all know that when we were at that time, we probably didn't recognize it for what it was. We suddenly realized with the benefit of hindsight that actually, wow, I actually looked great, I felt great. And look, you have kids, go through menopause, or, like everyone, you have a career, which means you don't have an active life. You're sat at your computer all day. You're surrounded by people who, graze on food. There's food around you all the time. And 20 years down the line, you're no longer fit and healthy. You're no longer fitting into the clothes you love. You no longer feel as confident having your photo taken. And you're out of the dating loop as well. I mean, that's for both sexes, isn't it? Many of you, myself included, we're all married. And so there is a kind of bit of peacocking, isn't there? I mean, I used to work with musicians, and you get a load of 18-year-old guys, and they're basically stallion, peacock, you name it. They're basically wearing feathers, and they're jumping around on stage, showing off to girls. And that motivates particularly men to perform and be stupid and do crazy things. But both sexes, when you're in a comfortable marriage, when you're in a comfortable relationship, you perhaps, perceive the way you take care of yourself differently. And it's not to say that you shouldn't stop taking care of yourself. It just means that you maybe not a show in the same way. People do tend to go to sleep on that. We all know that. And it's not to say that people don't go through phases. Sometimes you really take care of yourself, or maybe you're more present. New jobs, people start taking care of themselves again. When you're on the dating scene, people are very much on it. And so what happens is, I think because people are weighed down by the past, because the past becomes something that is no longer attainable. And remember, the system that worked when you were 25, when you could sleep in till 12 p.m. on a Saturday, when your metabolism allowed you to go on a big night out and then still go for a half marathon the next day, that system doesn't work. A lot of people I get on the phone, it's so common because our system is really quite simple. I mean, I like people to train twice a week, and everyone's going to shout at me, go, Paul, you need to train minimum 3 times a week. Well, no, you don't. And if you're training like 5 or 6 times a week as a 40-year-old, your program's probably crap. Okay, so if you are effective with your training system, you don't need to train as frequently as you think. However, a lot of people on the phone, because they had a system in which they could do pretty much anything and get a result, they say, I've got to train 5 or 6 days a week. But they're trying to put that system and overlay it onto a life now full of responsibilities, full of stress, full of travel, full of kids, full of social life is busier, and full of a lot of responsibilities. And it just doesn't work. So it kind of leaves us in a bit of a stalemate when I'm talking to someone on the phone, because in their head, they're saying, I need to be training at least 3, 4, 5 times a week in order to get results. And then they also have the logistical problems, because most people don't sign up to a program because they've kind of they have the pain point, they know why they need to change. It's just that they get overwhelmed by the logistics of it. And because the logistics have become overwhelming, they say, it's too much. And if you're operating under a software which is outdated and you're trying to apply that software in an environment where it's not going to be relevant, you end up doing nothing. So what do I mean? I mean, you just need to train twice a week and that's success. Yeah, but I need to train 4 times a week. That's how I've always got results. Yeah, but in our system, we only expect you to train twice a week. And we know, that obviously, if you dedicate more time, then that's fantastic. But it's not a failure if you don't. Yeah, but that's not going to work for me. I need to train 3 to 4 times a week. Okay, so how much time do you have? What are the things getting in the way of you? Well, I have kids, I have my job, I have international travel. Okay, so what happens when you can't train 4 times a week? Well, I'm going to do it because I'm super motivated, I can make it happen. Okay, but given that you haven't done anything for 4 years, going straight from 0 to 4 or 5 times a week, do you think that's possible? Yes, it's possible. Okay. Well, what we say is we're going to save you some time and we're going to only expect you in twice a week. Yeah, but that's not going to work for me. And then what you get is this loop. You get this loop. And the problem is I've got, what do they say? If a lion could speak English, we still wouldn't understand them, because they're coming from such a different paradigm. And that paradigm is the paradigm of the 25-year-old, the paradigm where you could eat what you want. You just cut a few calories and all of a sudden you lose weight. Now that doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Well, maybe you're going through menopause. Maybe you're just hyper stressed because of the amount of work you're doing, financial pressure, relationship pressure, career pressure, all these kind of things get in the way. So what am I saying the solution is? The solution is really simple. The solution is, yes, the goals are still important, to be fit, healthy, slim, strong. You can be really strong. I'm stronger now than I was when I was 18. Yeah, there's stronger people. I get comments all the time on this saying, everyone's stronger than you, blah, blah, blah. It's generally like, the usual troll who's sitting at the desk, with no friends. And there's no point replying to anything sarky to them. You just kind of agree with them. But yeah, you can be really strong at whatever age. Why do you have to be weak just because you're over 40? It's just the system you've been using is wrong. So the way I like to do it is like you make a commitment to the things that are going to move the needle. Strength training is going to move the needle. Lifting heavy is going to move the needle. Being effective with the time that you can dedicate. Time management becomes the key thing. When you've got all the free time when I was 25 and I had no kids, and my job wasn't as demanding and I didn't have as much responsibilities, I could wake up at a, generally at a more flexible time. I go to bed when I want, knowing I could catch up with it at the weekend. I could go for a night out and drink and know that I wasn't going to be woken up at 6 a.m. by my kids, So what we now need to do is say, okay, let's train twice a week. Let's lock it in. Let's lift heavy. Let's teach you some skills. It's been 10 years since you've done it, so we've got to relearn some skills. We can't just go in beast mode, weekend warrior mode. We've got to come in a little bit slower. So the ramp is slower, or the ramp is less steep, but we can still ramp you up. We change the timelines. We don't do things in 6 weeks. We do things over 6 months. We still get to the similar destination, just took us a bit longer. But then you're older, aren't you? So you've got more patience. You should do. What else do? We have to take into account that there's a few more moving parts. There has to be other people involved in the process. It's not just you deciding to go on a diet. You've got to talk to your partner about the kind of foods you want to eat. You've got to talk to your work about not putting meetings in when you're about to do a class. So there's more moving parts, there's more organization. And that is more demanding, that is more fatiguing. And when there's more moving parts, it's more frustrating. But that's just the way it's going to be. You either get the work done at the beginning or see it fall apart quicker than you would like, okay? Because most people try and stack up loads and loads and loads of moving parts and then say, go. And because they've stacked so many moving parts, they've got, we've got to have the perfect diet, we've got to have the perfect training system, we've got to have the right frequency, I've got to do my movement, my swimming, this, that, the other, and they line up about 10, 15 things that have got to be perfect. And then in their head, they say, well, I can't do all of that because I don't have the time. I'm going to have 6 weeks in the future, and that's the perfect time for me to start. It never happens. And even when they have that time, because they don't have the skills, it's overwhelming to do all those things at once, and they don't do it. So I say, right, let's stagger things. Let's just start now. Start now. You're ready to go now. Minimum commitment, twice a week, just show up. That's it. In a month, we say, right, do you think you could track some food? Just take some pictures of your food. Yeah, next month. Right, what we've noticed about your food is, let's do this, this, and this. We're not eating breakfast, or we're not eating a good dinner. Right, let's make some changes here. You stack those things. Each point, you nail them, you consolidate them, you don't stop them. And you start getting to the point after 12 months, for example, you've added 12 habits. So rather than putting 12 habits right in month 1, at the end of it, you've done the first habit for 12 months, the 10th habit for 2 months, but you've got all 12 habits put in place by the end of the year. That's how you get results. It allows your body to adapt, it allows your timetable to adapt, it allows other people around you to adapt. And we do get stuck in our ways, don't we? And the people around us get stuck in their ways. That is my general approach. But I can say that because I'm not you, I'm not emotionally involved in your journey. I'm emotionally involved in my own journey, and trust me, I have my emotions around my own journey. And that's why it's important to have a third party. I mean, it's not a sales pitch for personal training, but there is a reason that the most successful people in the world have coaches, because they are not always a good judge of their own progress. I think elite people are better judges than the average, but they also know when they need interventions, they need pattern interrupts, they need expertise, and they need a team around them. So if you're looking for a team, go search in your local area for a good personal trainer, good nutrition coach, business coach, life coach, whatever you're trying to solve. Get in touch with us if you're in Wandsworth, Putney in London. We'll be able to help you. Otherwise, if you've got any questions, just send them to us. All our details are below this video. And I hope that's given you some food for thought.